The first new headliner of Phase 4 just kicked his way into the MCU and brought a whole new world with him. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been making a habit of proving that you don't need a character that's already a headliner to carry a film. Marvel's Master of Kung Fu has come out swinging to expand the MCU, not just around the world, but to even more dimensions. Just how much deeper did the MCU get thanks to Shang-Chi's family issues? Let's get into it. Klev is back. Not since Cameron Klein refused to activate Project Oversight despite Rumlow's gun to his head, then showed up operating Fury's vintage helicarrier, has a seemingly minor character gotten so much attention. We first saw Klev geeking out when he managed to see that spider guy on YouTube and asked for a flip. Klev has made his way to the West Coast just in time to be riding the bus when Wenwu's henchmen decided Muni was the best place to make a grab for the pendant that Shang-Chi's mother gave him. Thanks to his quick live stream, he's also responsible for Shang-Chi going public, though giving him the name Bus Guy underlines the importance of branding. Good thing Peter Parker had the good sense to correct the record when he met Klev. It's only a matter of time now before Klev witnesses something that results in him being interviewed by Jimmy Woo. It's gonna happen. There is a lot of attention given to the game of who's your daddy when it comes to Shang-Chi that we may have lost track of his mother, who has her own whole prominence. The first of those is her homeland, something of an obsession for Shang-Chi's pops, and that was before he knew the woman of his dreams was at the gate. As of last Wednesday, Ta Lo wasn't the best known location in the Marvel Universe, but it's the center of the action in Shang-Chi, but it doesn't come from the Master of Kung Fu comics. That honor goes to Thor number 301, when Thor visited the Great Canopy of the Heavens, otherwise known as Dalu Taion. For Thor, it was a peer-to-peer visit. Dalu Taion is the mystical home city to Taoist deities, in the same way that Asgard is the home of Norse deities. It turns out that the bad guy in Shang-Chi was just an unwitting tool of an even badder guy, the being of unspeakable horror that the people of Ta Lo had taken an oath to keep under wraps with the help of a magical dragon that wasn't Fin Fang Foom. I'm coming to terms with it. That being of eldritch horror was the Dweller in Darkness. While it might seem like they were making a reasonable effort to keep a giant horror dragon from just wrecking up the earth, there was something even darker in the creature named after his lighting preferences. The Dweller in Darkness is what's known as a Fear Lord. In Shang-Chi, he was powered up by the collected souls of the Ten Rings and Ta Lo fighters, but in the comics, he also feeds off fear. Other notable Fear Lord members include Doctor Strange's first foe Nightmare and Cloak and Dagger's Season 2 villain Despair. The Dweller in Darkness opened the world to the Fear Lord demons, so who knows what collateral damage has been caused by Wenwu opening the gate. It's always awkward having dinner with your friend's parents, especially when said parent is an estranged father who is over 1,000 years old, controls immense power, and runs a vast underground empire of influence peddling and crime. You never know when he might launch into a monologue about the importance of names. Key to that was even when Killian and Trevor Slattery gave him a silly name, he was still menacing. While Shang-Chi in the comics is not the child of the Mandarin in the comics, his dad still has a bit of an identity crisis. That's because he started life as Sax Rohmer's pulp Fu Manchu character before the license lapsed. Shang-Chi's father then revealed that he was really Zheng Zhu. The important bit remained intact. He was an ancient and powerful wielder of magic and, by and large, a jerk. Of all the things that happened in Phase 1 of the MCU, perhaps none of them leave as many questions as the Incredible Hulk. Bruce is breaking hearts across the MCU as he seems to have forgotten all about his longtime love, Betty Ross, despite her father continuing his hardcore hate for Banner and his greener half. We know, thanks to a tie-in comic, that Samuel Stearns was on his way to becoming the leader when Black Widow contained him, but since then, who knows? While Thunderbolt Ross has gone on to be a thorn to the entire Avengers team, Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination, has only managed to be mentioned in passing. In the Marvel one-shot The Consultant, Tony Stark is sent in to sour Ross on the idea that the Abomination should be in the Avengers, and on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Coulson threatening someone with watch duty over the Abomination's cryo-containment. Well, now we know that Wong has been taking Blonsky out for cage matches, seemingly to both train him as well as to make a little side money. Those tuna melts don't buy themselves. Shang-Chi doesn't just have a sister in the comics, he has a lot of them, but none of them are named Xailing. Instead, Xailing combined elements from his various sisters. His full sister, Shihao, was raised with Shang-Chi at the Hunan Palace, until they were caught doing something they shouldn't. Their father, being the peach that he was, marked her forehead and then sent her to the House of Deadly Hammers, while telling Shang-Chi that he disposed of her. Like Xailing, she grew to resent her brother and eventually led the House of the Deadly Staff in an attempt to eliminate him. Bao Yu, or the Cursed Lotus, would eventually go on to lead her own criminal empire like Xailing when we met her. Esme, otherwise known as Sister Dagger, was the leader of the House of Deadly Daggers. Jilan, or Sister Staff, was captured on social media using her mutant ability to change sound into physical objects, similar to Xailing seeing Shang-Chi on Klev's pote. The Dweller in Darkness had a little help outside of convincing Wenwu to huff and puff and blow the gate down. That help came in the form of the Soul Eaters, beings first seen in the pages of Doctor Strange all the way back to number 2 of Volume 2. The ones that Strange encountered had fled the 6th dimension, not to be confused with the 5th dimension, famous for their hit Let the Sun Shine In. The 6th dimension? Yeah, less sunshine. Strange defeated them by besting their champion, Spurgog the Hellbreather, which lent some of his look to the Dweller in Darkness creature. Now, Spurgog the Hellbreather? That's a name. I kinda want an adorable kitten now, so I can just name it Spurgog the Hellbreather. Ta Lo definitely has its own mythology as part of the Taoist 36 heavens protected by mythical creatures like the Jia He, those lion-like creatures, Feng Huang, the firebirds, and Kailin, that dragon-headed horse. And of course the celestial dragon, the one that wasn't Fin Fang Foom. I'm alright, no, it's fine, it's fine. There are another set of magical cities that behave a bit like Ta Lo, and that's the 7 capital cities of heaven. The best known, of course, being Kunlun, where a young Danny Rand was stranded, learned Kung Fu, and eventually became the immortal Iron Fist. Like Ta Lo, Kunlun has a dragon, but in Kunlun's case, it's a dragon the next candidate for the Iron Fist has to punch out in order to get their Iron Fist powers. Also, like Ta Lo, access to these mystical cities only occurs at specific times when there's a convergence with Earth. Each of the 7 cities develop their own champion, all of whom gather periodically to fight in a tournament. How cool! It's been a while, but now we're back to the norm of the mid-credit scene connecting the movie we just watched to the wider MCU. In this case, we got a glimpse of 2 Avenger experts, one in science and one in space stuff, try to work out the origin of the 10 rings. Representing science was Bruce Banner. That's Bruce Banner, not Smart Hulk. This suggests that something went wrong with the deal that Bruce and the other guy had worked out to share custody of Bruce's body. The other thing we saw is that he's still nursing a broken wing. Taking place so close to Endgame, that wouldn't seem remarkable, but the other guy gives Bruce a pretty spectacular healing factor, meaning that this is no normal injury. Okay, the Great Protector Dragon wasn't a fake-out. It really was the Great Protector Dragon, and not a fake-out that turned out to be Fin Fang Foom. Deep breaths. This is fine. No one said he was going to be Fin Fang Foom. I just kind of expected it. There was a reason to believe that, however. That's because Fin Fang Foom is tied to the Mandarin's 10 rings in the comics. The 10 rings aren't magical. They're super science from an alien race of shapeshifters, the most well-known being Fin Fang Foom. The Mandarin found the wreckage of the McLuhan spaceship and he crafted the 10 rings from what he could salvage. The true story of how Wenwu found the rings went to the grave with him, but the versions of the story we did get don't close the door on them still being of McLuhan origin, meaning Fin Fang Foom is still on the table, guys. Marvel Comics are notoriously centered around the Marvel bullpen headquarters of New York City. While heroes hail from other countries, planets, and realities, the world of Marvel revolves around New York. Captain America is from Brooklyn, Spider-Man is from Queens, Daredevil is from Hell's Kitchen, but there has been some room for California love, as first Scott Lang and now Shang-Chi hail from the city by the bay, San Francisco. This has made it a favorite for Marvel car chases. Ant-Man and the Wasp featured a side-adjustable car chase through the streets of San Francisco, and now Wenwu's assassins chased down the Muni bus Shang-Chi was riding to work. It's fitting as what's considered the godfather of the modern car chase was born in San Francisco in Steve McQueen's Bullet. That's a fun fact for you. Okay, this one's not a Marvel reference, but instead a nod to the career of stuntman and athlete turned actor Simu Liu. Liu started off as a stunt performer in things like Pacific Rim and the Heroes Reborn series. While he's been cast in things in both the United States and the BBC, he's perhaps best known for his role as Jung in the Canadian sitcom Kim's Convenience, where he portrayed the son of a Korean couple that owns a corner convenience store in Toronto. Only Liu is not Korean, which gets highlighted in Shang-Chi when he tells the story of how he met his best friend Katie. When Shang-Chi heads to China to meet his sister, he instead ends up in an elaborate underground fighting compound. Unknown to him, he's become internet famous over the course of the plane ride thanks to Klev's video, which earned Shang-Chi a feature round against his sister who was running the fights. The fight center is named the Golden Daggers Fight Club, which is one of the names of the criminal gangs Shang-Chi's sister Bao Yu formed when she got out from underneath her father's influence. Xailing has something in common with the MCU's first star. We eventually get to see Xailing's room as she left it, including a poster for the iconic hardcore rock band AC/DC. AC/DC's Back in Black was a favorite anthem for one Tony Stark, and in Iron Man 2, he made his dramatic entrance to the Stark Expo to shoot to thrill. Peter Parker might not know the difference between AC/DC, but the new leader of the Ten Rings, Xailing, knows for sure. Wenwu took over the legacy of the Mandarin from Marvel Comics by possessing the Ten Rings and leading the Ten Rings organization, the first group of bad guys to appear in the MCU. But they didn't just move the Mandarin into Zhang Wu's position. The Ten Rings as an organization is relatively new in the comics, but Zhang Wu led his own far-reaching criminal organization called the Five Weapons Society. Each weapon had a house that was led by someone appointed by Wu or fought over by some of his children. Those houses were the House of the Deadly Dagger in France, the House of the Deadly Staff in England, the House of the Deadly Hammer in Russia, and the House of the Deadly Saber in Japan. The last house is Wu's, the House of the Deadly Hand. The Five Weapons Society was originally formed in China to protect a region from Fin Fang Foom. Seriously, I'll be fine, I just want him in a movie. When Wenwu explained that there never really was a person known as the Mandarin and that he's been called a number of things, he listed a series of aliases, some of which applied to Zhang Wu, and at least one that applied to the Mandarin himself. Wenwu drops the name Master Khan as one of his aliases, something the Mandarin used as an alias in number 16 of Iron Man Volume 4. While Wenwu was complaining about people using his name for their own gain though, he might want to look within. Master Khan is also a separate character, a powerful sorcerer that first appeared in a one-off horror story in the pages of Strange Tales. He would later re-emerge as a foil to Iron Fist and Kunlun. It was Master Khan that told Rand that the leader of Kunlun, Nuan, allowed Rand's mother to perish in order to take him in as an orphan and begin training him. When Shang-Chi's aunt is filling in our heroes on the role of Ta Lo in protecting one reality from another by putting Ta Lo's reality between the two, she drops a telling pronoun. She refers to the people of Earth as you, indicating she's not human. If she's not human, then what is she? Well, in the comics, the people of Ta Lo are the Xians. Think of them like Asgardians but the Taoist pantheon instead. Being a Xian comes with a few benefits beyond just airbending. Xians weren't born or created in the traditional sense, but rather granted status after proving they're worthy by the primeval Lord of Heaven, granting them the peach of immortality. They're all sensitive to the use of magic in various forms and are able to use their mysticism to heal themselves or even in certain circumstances revive one of their fallen so long as their spirit hasn't gotten too far away. Master of Kung Fu might have been the best-known comic in Marvel's catalog, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a rogues gallery to pull from, and the two standout baddies are a part of that. Death Dealer was an assassin from Fu Manchu's organization that was sent to spy on Shang-Chi in MI6 by joining MI6. He wasn't able to hide his shady ways and was ousted by Shang-Chi. His efforts were rewarded with a cool costume and a new name, the Death Dealer. His career in the comics was about as short-lived as in the movies, having met his end at the hands of Shang-Chi 3 issues after he debuted. Razor Fist is a mercenary first hired to take out Shang-Chi. It didn't work, so he doubled his arm blades and tried again and failed. He became a hitman for a Madripoor gang leader where he would fight Hawkeye and Wolverine. He takes several L's, often seeming to be fatal L's, but somehow just pops up again to almost succeed in taking someone out. By and large, the Zhu family have been spectators to the MCU. It's not even clear if the group that kidnapped Tony at the beginning of the MCU was part of it or a splinter group using the name. Shang-Chi was 12 when Tony Stark introduced himself as Iron Man, 2 years away from being sent to assassinate the man responsible for taking his mother away from him. So Wenwu was well into the process of rebuilding his empire. But what really ties Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings to the MCU is the events of Iron Man 3. Wenwu apparently took the Mandarin fake out harder than the fans, sending Scoot McNairy to take Trevor Slattery from Seagate Prison, where Justin Hammer is also being held, and where an unethical scientist does what unethical scientists do in Marvel and turned Luke Cage into Power Man. It's Trevor and his close relationship with a Daijing named Morris that guides the heroes to Ta Lo by keeping them in the pocket. Of course, the biggest Marvel reference is the unanswered question, just who are the rings signaling to? There are a lot of options. Their ancient age lines up with the 7,000-year-old Eternals, or their more ancient creators, the Celestials. Kang is a multi-dimensional time-traveling ball of horror that will be dominating the bad guy scape for at least a bit, who could leave some new old stuff basically whenever, so it could be him. Of course, they could be signaling their original origin and makers, the McLuhan, and their best-known member, Fin Fang Foom. Trevor sure made it seem like a Daijing would make an awesome pet, but their bodies are supposed to encompass emptiness and are known for bringing chaos. Its other name is Hundun, which is chaos, and they're one of the 4 evils. So, okay, basically it's like a cat.